Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Naomi Hamilton is back on the trail, her instincts sharper than ever, her suspicion building with each cryptic clue. She's not chasing rumors anymore. She's chasing a truth buried so deep beneath Fairmont crust that it threatens to upend everything. Naomi begins by following subtle whispers and inconsistencies, stray mentions of the name Regina, sightings around town, and vague timelines that never quite add up. Something's off. And Naomi, as always, refuses to let it lie. Naomi finds Regina living under a different name, in a rundown rental on the edge of town. The woman is guarded, sharp-tongued, and clearly burdened by a past she doesn't want to reopen. But Naomi is relentless. With careful persistence, she peels away the surface defenses until Regina finally agrees to talk. What she says sends tremors through Naomi's already shaken worldview. Regina reveals that Bill, the polished, well-respected lawyer at the center of town's social structure, is not the man everyone believes him to be. Long before he arrived in Fairmont Crest, he lived under a different light, one stained by betrayal. Regina explains that June wasn't just a woman from his past. She was his wife. His legal, devoted, unsuspecting wife. They were married young, before Bill had made a name for himself. Back then, Bill was all ambition and little restraint. When opportunities came, he took them even if it meant taking from June. Regina, who worked closely with them at the time, says Bill drained June's savings under the guise of investment and stability. Then, without warning, he vanished. He left June with nothing. No home, no income, no explanation. Naomi listens in horror as Regina describes the fallout. June spiraled, mentally and financially. She was evicted, isolated, and eventually disappeared from all their lives. Regina assumed she had moved away, or worse. No one thought she'd survived. Until now. Because Naomi knows June. She knows the quiet woman who walks the edge of Fairmont Crest like a ghost. She knows the look in her eyes. The way she tenses at the name Bill. It all makes sense now. Naomi asks Regina to help her bring the truth to light. Regina hesitates, but Naomi makes it clear, this isn't just about June. It's about the other women Bill has drawn in since. If he could do that to one woman, he could do it again. They go first to Dani. A close friend to both Naomi and, oddly enough, Bill, Dani is known for her level head and loyalty. Naomi presents the information carefully, methodically. Regina confirms the timeline. They show documents, old photos, marriage certificates. Dani doesn't speak for a long time. Then she says, "I think I dodged a bullet." She explains how years earlier, Bill tried to involve himself in a land deal she was pursuing. It never sat right with her, and she backed out. At the time, she thought it was intuition. Now she knows it was survival. Together, the three women decide they need to confront Bill. But before they do, Naomi seeks out June. She finds her on the same park bench where she sat every Thursday afternoon for as long as anyone can remember. Naomi sits beside her, quiet at first. Then she says, "I know who you are. And I know what he did." June says nothing for a while. Then she looks at Naomi, eyes wet, voice soft. "I thought no one remembered." Naomi tells her that it's time to be remembered. That she deserves a voice. That silence is no longer her only option. June nods. She doesn't smile, but there is something new in her face, a flicker of resolve. The confrontation takes place on a rainy evening, the sky fittingly bleak. Naomi, Regina, Dani, and June arrive at Bill's home together. Hayley, Bill's current wife, is there too, sipping wine by the fireplace, unaware that the entire facade is about to crumble. Naomi speaks first. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't accuse. She simply states facts. Regina confirms them. June remains quiet, but her presence says everything. Bill tries to deny. Then he tries to charm. Then he tries to intimidate. But none of it works. Hayley listens, stone-faced. She asks no questions. Then she turns to Bill and says, "Is it true?" Bill, cornered and deflated, gives a nod. That's all it takes. Hayley stands, calmly removes her wedding ring, and places it on the table. "Then I'm done." She walks out of the room and never looks back. In the days that follow, Naomi helps June hire a legal team. Regina provides sworn testimony. Dani pulls records. The case against Bill is strong, airtight. He's given a choice: transfer half his assets to June and sign a public statement acknowledging the harm he caused, or face charges of fraud and marital abandonment. Bill, always the survivor, signs the documents. But the cost isn't just financial. He loses his firm, his status, his carefully curated reputation. And worse than all of that, he loses control. June, with the settlement, buys a small home in Fairmont Crest. Nothing extravagant. Just a quiet, sunlit place with a garden. Naomi visits often. So does Dani. Regina disappears again, her part played, her peace reclaimed. Hayley files for divorce and moves to the coast, opening a wellness retreat for women starting over. Fairmont Crest doesn't talk much about Bill anymore. He's become a cautionary tale, a name mentioned in hushed tones. But the women who exposed him? They became something else entirely. A force. A reckoning. The backlash against Bill didn't stop at reputation. Though he narrowly avoided criminal charges, the court of public opinion was swift and brutal. Clients dropped him. Colleagues distanced themselves. The once celebrated attorney found himself locked out of the circles he once dominated. Within weeks, Bill was forced to resign from the firm he helped build. June didn't attend the press conference where Bill announced his withdrawal from public life, but she watched it from the safety of her new home. She said nothing as he rambled through a half-hearted apology. She didn't need to. The power had already shifted. For the first time in decades, June wasn't surviving. She was choosing. Naomi, meanwhile, didn't stop with Bill. She saw the case as a symptom of something broader: how a community had embraced silence for the sake of image, how women like June had been erased in plain sight. She pitched a story to a national investigative outlet. It was picked up immediately. Over several weeks, Naomi worked with a small team to build a comprehensive exposé on Bill's past and the culture of complicity that shielded him. Regina provided extensive background. Anonymous sources came forward. Even a former paralegal at Bill's firm shared confidential notes outlining suspicious transactions linked to his early career. The deeper they dug, the more rot they found. When the article published, it wasn't just Fairmont Crest that took notice. Legal boards opened formal investigations into how Bill had retained his license despite clear misconduct. The dominoes fell fast. Within months, his law license was suspended pending a full ethics review. The phrase "Bill Hargrave case" became a trending topic and a national reference point in legal reform debates. Dani, initially shaken, emerged as a voice of clarity. In local interviews, she spoke openly about the illusion of safety and privilege. She didn't paint herself as a victim, but as someone lucky enough to escape with her assets and her dignity intact. More than that, she invested part of her savings into a legal defense fund for women caught in financially abusive relationships. She named it June's Circle. Hayley found her footing faster than anyone expected. Her wellness retreat attracted women across the region. Survivors. Seekers. Women searching for permission to heal without apology. Her name, once tied to Bill's, became something else, a signal of strength in the aftermath. Despite the victories, June struggled with her own emotional reckoning. She now lived in comfort, but comfort doesn't erase decades of pain. Naomi became her anchor, checking in often, encouraging therapy, organizing dinners with Dani and, occasionally, Hayley. They didn't always get along, but they shared something rare: clarity. One afternoon, while helping June plant lavender in the yard, Naomi asked the question neither had voiced aloud. "Do you ever want to confront him? Really confront him?" June wiped her hands on her jeans, thought for a long moment, and said, "I already have. Just not with words." But fate had a different confrontation in mind. Weeks later, Bill was spotted in town. Older. Disheveled. Rumors spread quickly. He had returned not to reclaim his name but to settle his affairs. His house was listed for sale. His remaining possessions were being packed by movers. He was, it seemed, preparing to vanish again, but this time without control. June didn't speak when she saw him in the grocery store. Neither did he. But the moment didn't go unnoticed. Hayley heard. Dani heard. Naomi heard. And together, they decided something unfinished needed closure. They invited Bill to a meeting. Neutral ground. A rented space in the community center. He showed up, out of curiosity or guilt or something heavier. For women. One man. Naomi opened. Calm. Professional. This isn't about vengeance. It's about clarity. Hayley went next. She described the way lies chip away at trust, how waking up one day in a marriage with someone who isn't who they claim to be is a kind of grief no court can quantify. Dani followed. She said she didn't blame him for what didn't happen between them, she blamed him for what could have. For being the kind of man who could have. And then June. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply looked at him and said, I thought I was broken. I thought you made me that way. But I wasn't broken. I was buried. And now I'm not. Bill sat in silence. The mask he wore for so long had shattered. He didn't apologize. He didn't defend. He simply stood, nodded once, and left. That was the last time any of them saw him. Months passed. Then a letter arrived at June's door. No return address. Inside was a signed transfer of full ownership to a property in the outskirts of Fairmont Crest, the cabin Bill once used as a personal retreat. Along with it, a handwritten note. A poor attempt at restitution. Do what you want with it. B. June donated the property to Hayley's retreat. Life didn't return to normal. It evolved. Naomi's article won a journalism award. Regina disappeared again, this time with a smile. Dani expanded her defense fund. Hayley bought more land. June, for the first time in years, traveled. And though they went their separate ways, the women of Fairmont Crest remained connected by something no scandal could shake. They were the truth. And they had survived it. A year later, the women gathered again, this time not in confrontation, but in celebration. Hayley had completed a major expansion of her retreat, adding a community education wing dedicated to financial literacy and emotional resilience. The grand opening was intimate. No reporters. Just the circle that had started everything. Naomi arrived first, a notepad in hand and that same quiet fire in her eyes. Dani brought local pastries and a bottle of wine from a vineyard she'd invested in with profits from June's circle. June wore a soft blue dress, the kind she used to admire in shop windows, but never allowed herself to own. Regina was last, unannounced, stepping out of a rideshare in a coat too heavy for the weather, but smiling like she belonged. The space was beautiful. Sunlight poured through the tall windows. Walls were painted in warm creams and greens. Artwork from local women lined the halls, each piece telling a story of hardship turned into power. Hayley gathered them in the main hall. This isn't just for us, she said. It's for anyone who's ever been made to feel small, disposable, or silenced. June nodded slowly, eyes glassy but bright. Then we did it. We really did it. The others murmured in agreement, but Naomi didn't speak. Instead, she handed June a bound book. On the cover, the title read, Buried, Not Broken, The Women of Fairmont Crest. Inside were their stories. Not polished. Not exaggerated. Just honest. The book was being published next spring. Royalties were to be split equally between June's circle and Hayley's foundation. For a while, they stood in silence, surrounded by sunlight and truth. Then June took a slow breath and said, I'm ready to forgive. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Him. June shook her head. Myself. They spent the day walking the grounds, planting rosemary and wildflowers. Regina laughed harder than she had in years. Dani taught a small workshop on estate planning. Hayley led a yoga class beneath the trees. Naomi sat on a bench and watched them all, scribbling something she wasn't ready to show anyone yet. That evening, after the guests had gone, the 5 women remained, gathered around a fire pit under a navy sky. Do you ever wonder what happened to him? Dani asked, not out of curiosity, but out of finality. No, June replied. Because I stopped waiting for that answer to fix anything. Regina nodded. It's not about where he ended up. It's about where we did. Hayley raised a glass. To the end of silence. To the start of everything else, Naomi added. They clinked their glasses together and sat back as stars gathered above them. What began with a buried truth ended with an unshakable bond. Not every story ends with justice in a courtroom. Some end in a garden with laughter, lavender, and light.